All right. Hello, welcome back. This is Colin Keeley here,
And I'm Brent Sanders.
and we are the co-founders of Avocado, an audio publishing platform. So we talked a bit in the past about business coaching, and Brent hired his business coach. So how is that going?
So far, so good. We've had one session, and it was a long, almost like hour and a half session, just to kind of get background on everything I'm working on, history, what I expect out of coaching. That was like what centered around most of the discussions. Like, what do you think this is? What do you think you're going to get out of it? How do you expect me to define success as the coach, as in how does the coach define success? So so far so good. And the main takeaway is, he wants me journaling. So a little bit of background information. I think I mentioned in the prior episode, my wife uses a coach, and this was the referral from her. She's had a ton of success from it, and she's much more geared towards, like, she has a coach. She has multiple coaches, right? She's very, very keyed into people kind of helping her push forward. And I was much more hesitant. I'm like, I don't know that I need one. As we talked about in the prior episode, there's this sort of idea that you either got it or you don't, which kind of makes sense. But I realized, at this stage of my career, the long and the short of it is like, I've had a career in one particular place, and I'm trying in the last year and in the future, and this next year, really trying to make a major shift. And I think now is a very particularly good time for me to get a coach, just so I have another set of eyes, and very similar to a therapist, like pay someone to kind of listen to you and walk through your thinking and make sure you're on the right track. Because to me, this is like the year where I'm tapping on my savings. I'm tapping on all the resources that I've sort of built up to make a major change. So I'm not trading my time for money. So I feel like now is a particularly good time to have a coach, especially just give me a little bit more peace of mind that I'm not like working on too many things or spreading my focus too thin or focusing on the wrong things. I think those are my main concerns that I brought to the coach. And yeah, we're gonna meet weekly for the next month, and then we'll kind of figure out what that looks like. But his homework to me was start journaling every single day. So on that, I was an early adopter of Rome, gave it up. I think we've talked about it on the podcast, gave it up when they were having, some very minor database issues or something, the service disruptions, gave it up, and then just spun it back up and have started journaling day to day. What am I doing? How's it going? What's my routine been like? And it's been good. I was just bugging you for some tips on Rome, because I know you're an avid user.
Yeah, I'm somewhat avid. I wouldn't say I'm like advanced in any sense. I take the daily notes and just my general notes, and then kind of connect everything together. And then through Readwise, I have my Kindle highlights in there and my Instapaper highlights. So like, it is definitely a bit of a second brain to me, but I love Rome because it is pretty unstructured. And so I sent you over some, reading material, and Anonymous has a course on YouTube that's free. That's quite good. He is very structured, and it's more of like the structured second brain approach from Tiago. And that's not me as much. He spends just too much time managing his notes. I just want to like have them there and like get value out of them, which is why I like Rome. And then Nat Eliason has a $250 course, but he also has just a bunch of blog posts that kind of explain how he uses it. And I've talked to a bunch of people that have taken his course. They say it's all great, but you don't really have to do it. And you can just read through his blog post and kind of get the idea and go from there. So I definitely lean more towards Nat's like free flowing approach.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, I dig it. And it's an unopinionated platform. You can kind of use it how you want. There's some killer features. The main feature that I think everyone should know about is just, and I don't know what they're actually called, but the references of being able to, left and right bracket, like those hard braces, and wrapping around a keyword term. And then you can click on that term and see every reference of it, which is, for me, this is how I use it. The references are each project, like formulated podcasts. Every project or business we're working on has its own reference. And then things like family, health, mental, the things that I'm trying to kind of keep track of in my day to day. I can go back and see, okay, here's every entry from every day on family. And for me, I'm trying to be thoughtful around how much time, like over the weekend, how much time am I spending with my son? How much time am I spending with my family? How much versus like, I notice I have this historical thing from particularly from when we didn't have kids is just weekends were for getting all the work done that I couldn't get done during the week. And generally some of the more fun stuff. So like I'd code more on the weekends because it was quiet, no emails, no distractions, kind of do some of that deep work that would feel really good. And I still have that sort of inclination to do it, but that's not why I had a family, is so I could not spend time with them, So it's almost like a wellness tool in a sense. Like Rome for me is very much like how am I tracking on day to day on my mood, my mental state, what I'm doing health wise, and then sure, what am I doing on these projects and business wise. So it's pretty cool. Like I like it, and I do think that there's a whole wellness ethos around journaling and mood sort of capture. I think I was having a really interesting conversation with one of our avocado publishers, Theory of Me, Jackie McNamara, who was on this podcast and talked to me about a new initiative she's doing around resilience, a whole module on resilience. It's like a 4 or 5 module series, and she's doing it with some of her clients. But the key of it is journaling. It's like, and they're writing prompts around resiliency, which is a topic that I know the venture world's always obsessed with, like looking at founders that are resilient, and the business world. There's like there's yearly, Harvard Business Review articles around what is resilience, and is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it like something we should use as a benchmark for successful people? So I don't know. I think journaling is probably a pretty good thing to get back in the habit of doing, which digitally it always felt weird to do, but I've been doing pen and paper for years. I have like a handful of notebooks that I have on my shelf that I'll crack open. And the one reflection I have on looking at old journals is how dumb my day-to-day was, like how serious I took everything. And I think that's the one reflection that feels really good. It's like, it actually puts me in a good mood. Is like, all right, let's not take this too seriously. Like, it's not really what matters in life is like how these work projects are going. I mean, it definitely is a big part of fulfillment and what I'm spending my time on, but it's like not everything.
The whole point of Rome is kind of, the thought is it's an easy way to get compound interest on your thoughts. So like all those paper notebooks, you got value at the time, right? Doing the note taking. But in theory with Rome, it's easy to traverse back like through your thoughts historically and see how they evolve. So it's bidirectional linking is the term that they use. I don't know, like I'm starting to see it, I guess, but in theory it like grows and grows the more you use it.
I started using Rome when we started Avocado, and it's funny, if I go back to my early sort of references of Avocado, there's actually some really good information there. And so it looks like I'm just looking back, my first couple entries, it looks like more so around April 12th. That's like of 2020. First entries, April. So I started using it then, I believe. And then you can see as you go through, you kind of, I tailed off and kind of stopped, and now I'm picking up again. But it's nice. I mean, I can go back and I'm still talking about and referencing the same thing. So there is a cohesive sort of map from the thought to thought. And so, as I go back to the Avocado web app, I can see, April 11th, I was concerned about making the audio player an auth, and then the more modern stuff is like, what are our customers saying, and what are we, more so the product questions, which is, it's fun to see. I mean, it's like, I think it is great. It's like going back and looking at a yearbook of your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Well, cool. You want to jump into this micro P deal we're working on?
Yeah, it's exciting. So we did legal review last week. We have a wonderful attorney who was able to hop in fairly quickly. So shout out to the folks at Good Counsel, Ken O'Bell's shop, who's helped me in a couple things and was able to bring one of their senior attorneys to review this document that we got, which was this big 40-something page APA, asset purchase agreement, which is like the main mechanic in which we're using to transfer the assets from our deal partner to us. And I feel like it went really well. Like in a lot of it, I think number one, I always say, going into these things, it's like making sure we have a strong business sort of align vision with the deal partner, and to give that sort of guidance to the attorney and say, hey, here's where we are on most of these things. And, being able to kind of come back with direction versus having the attorney drive a lot of the direction. And so she brought up a bunch of great points. I feel like we went through the first round, sent some red lines over. We talked it through with the deal partner, and he was very much like, these are all sound okay. Like, put in the red lines and we'll go from there, which I think is how a lot of the kind of, hey, let's understand the nature and high level of your feedback, and then I will give you my give your actual language to my attorney, because there's always that sort of hidden, like, well, how is this going to be phrased, and will be detrimental? And I feel like we were able to kind of navigate that fairly seamlessly. But with any agreement that I've always experienced, the indemnity clause always turns into the sort of sticky wicket that you can't really get a firm level of agreement on.
Yeah. So we had that kind of funny call where we're like progressing through, we have our red lines. We're trying to go through line by line. And it was basically us and the seller. So like the business sides and not the lawyers involved. And then we got talking about asset transfer taxes and whether they should be split or they should be like an issue just paid for by the seller. And we were like negotiating it, and neither of us really knew how much is going to be, or like if it was even a real thing and what the standards were. And we looked into it more, and it sounds like they're probably just going to be zero. And then
right.
We just decided to like, send these red lines back and forth. It's kind of a silly way to collaborate in like the days of Google Docs, where you could just see all changes as they happen. But we've been sending these emails back and forth. And, the way this started was I justified a price. I sent over a price in like basic terms, and the offer was accepted. And so we've kind of been progressing through. And my thinking generally with this is like, my price, your terms, or your price, my terms. Like, you can make any price work with the right terms. So I think our price was accepted. I think that's pretty favorable to us. And so on the indemnification part, I'm like more open to leaning his way or leaning the seller's way, and not, getting everything exactly as we want it.
Yeah. Well, that's one way of looking at it. But I think in terms of like the reality of a lot of these deals, it's like we are, you're ice skating in a lot of ways. You're kind of going between what you think you can get away with, and it's so unique. Like, this is not my first rodeo when it comes to this type of deal. I mean, we haven't bought a business before together, but it's so specific to the deal partner. And I would say the one that we have is very accommodating, and he's, I think, incentivized. I feel like there's a sense that we have pretty good alignment, and I feel like this has gone pretty easily because he's, I feel like, given a fair amount, right? The price is one big piece, but then to your point, there is this, like, there's always going to be like, who's going to get the last serving or the sort of the last word, and there's going to be, a favorable term. And I think upon retrospect, you actually are right. It's like, okay, well, we're getting our price, we're getting most of the things we want, and we can't get everything. Like, right, you can't expect someone to just completely fold, and unless that would almost be a red flag if they were like, okay, whatever you want, and we'll just give you this business. That would almost be scary.
Yeah, for sure. And then just like, I looked more into indemnification and liability, and kind of the sticking point with us is, are they liable beyond the cost or the price of the transaction? So do they have unlimited liability in the event that we get, I guess the real situation is if we get sued in the future after owning this asset for some large amount. And to me, it's just like, we're never going to spend millions and millions of dollars defending this. Like, our downside is probably just zero. We lose all the money we put in. So it doesn't quite make sense to me where, like, I would never sell some, like, I don't know, $100 skateboard if I thought there was like some chance that I would be liable for every possible thing that could happen within the future. Like, I think this skateboard works, but I can't be 100% sure you're not going to, hurt yourself on it. And I don't really want to have to deal with that liability going forward. So I guess totally. I empathize with the seller's perspective.
Yeah, that's the problem with with myself included. I empathize far too much. I'm like, yeah, that's reasonable. They seem like a nice guy, and we're in agreement, and everything's rosy. And the attorney's like, do you know what you're signing up for? And to the attorney's point, which is a really fair point, which is like, hey, if this wasn't an issue, have them sign it, and they assume the liability because it's not an issue, or they're telling you it's not an issue. But I think the reality is, it's like, we can get this deal done, and I think that's probably true for bigger deals. And to your point, like if for some, if we were to go back to them for, $1 million, they would just file bankruptcy. Like, everyone's such a small player that there's no cash or insurance that kind of goes behind them that would help like prop up defending something. Right. So if we were going to get $1 million IP lawsuit on us, it's like, sure, we can go back to them, but they're just going to file bankruptcy, and we're going to, go into receivership for pennies on the dollar, trying to recover those costs. It almost is a little bit liberating. And to your point, I think you mentioned this several times in our discussions, but probably earlier on the podcast, is that there just needs to be a safe note for these types of transactions because of that, because like, you're not going to buy anything that's going to have so much value that it's going to make sense to fight over the indemnification and these like long tail pieces of representations that hang up. 90% of our conversation has been around, okay, well, if this happens, who's going to be, representing that all of this is above board? It should just be like very blanket. And, I think at this size, you are assuming a little bit more risk than the attorneys would like, but that's just kind of no one's big enough to really go to bat and be responsible for, more than they're getting out of this deal.
Yeah, I think these small deals would just never get done if there's too much risk on the seller side. They would just, I don't know, keep running it until it went to zero and ran out of cash. I looked into this more. So larger M&A transactions have actually been moving away from these liability caps and towards the buyer pays for some kind of insurance, basically insuring against any previous issues. And then everyone's happy, I guess. The seller doesn't have to deal with it. The buyer feels safe. But I don't know if that exists. At least I haven't seen anyone talking about it in this like micro P level.
I bet you can get insurance. I mean, I remember, you can get a policy. Lloyd's of London will give you a policy for nearly anything. So I feel like you could probably get rated for something or get coverage. And if we really wanted to make this a thing, like, we could have probably made it as part of the financing, the seller side financing, and said, hey, we're going to carve out X amount of dollars for during the X amount of time, there's some sort of policy that we can be covered on, and make the seller essentially go through that diligence process. But that would probably make me feel better. But even still, it's just like, it seems like you really wouldn't, the odds of that happening are so small. But, I guess it's a possibility, and that's why the attorneys keep bringing it up.
Yeah. And I respect, like, that is her job. She's doing a great job doing it, of like reminding us of the risks. And then it's on us to decide, whether it's worth moving forward with these risks. And to me, and I think to you, it's just like, are we going to blow up this deal over this? Probably not. I don't think it's worthwhile. Like, we have enough trust that we feel good moving forward.
Yeah. So it's been I feel like things are moving along quickly, which has been our goal. Is like, we don't want to drag anything out. We want to keep the deal momentum going, which I feel like is really, really important. So we don't lose sight of, like, getting this thing closed by the end of the month and getting started on building and growing it.
Yeah, I look forward to building in public on this podcast. I got some feedback from folks that have really enjoyed this kind of like inside look into the micro P world. And once we take ownership of it, we could talk through all the improvements we're making and how it's going. I think that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, until next week, talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.